A monumental property tax reform bill narrowly passed the state house after a lively debate Friday. The University of Wyoming mourns 3 college swimmers who were killed Thursday. And the National Museum of Military Vehicles does more than display historic tanks, it restores them. We'll take a look at these stories and more today from Wyoming's largest news organization. I'm Wendy Kaur for Cowboy State Daily. A bill that would exempt about 97% of Wyoming homeowners from paying property tax in exchange for a 2% sales tax hike barely passed the State House on Friday after an emotional, drama-filled debate. Political reporter Leo Wolfson was there for the debate, into which legislators managed to drop in references to President George Washington, former Governor Stanley Hathaway, women's suffrage, and American patriotism.
What was most interesting about the debate that occurred on this bill on Friday afternoon was the imagery and symbolism that some of the people got into to try to advocate for this bill. All in all, it was a very spirited and highly entertaining debate that ended in a 31-29 vote with the bill passing, but on an extremely narrow margin. So this bill is going to have a long way to go before it can pass into law.
Wolfson reports that the bill has truly split the room, with Democrats, Wyoming Caucus Republicans, and Social Conservative Wyoming Freedom Caucus Republicans all voting for and against it. The University of Wyoming is mourning 3 swimming and diving team members who were killed Thursday in a one-vehicle rollover south of the Wyoming-Colorado border. Charlie Clark, Carson Muir, and Luke Slabber died near the intersection of Highway 287 and Red Mountain Road, about 10 miles south of the Colorado-Wyoming border. That's according to Cowboy State Daily's Claire McFarland.
I spent Friday talking to the 3 students' club coaches. In swimming, you can do it in school, but a lot of really devoted swimmers will also join a club, and these students had. So these coaches and directors knew them well and reflected on them fondly.
Authorities said the group was not traveling to an official school or athletic function at the time. The crash is under investigation. Well, after a decade of legal tussling, the coal industry may have won a drawn-out battle to lift a moratorium on federal coal leasing, but now comes the difficult part. Energy reporter Pat Mayo says experts don't expect a bidding rush until after the November 5th presidential election.
The expectation was that, coal companies would start rushing to wanting to lease land so they could mine more coal. But of course, there's that double-edged sword that, there's not the demand there like it used to be 10 years ago when this moratorium first went into place.
Some experts believe there won't be much tangible interest until after the November 5th election because of the Biden administration's continued push of anti-coal policies and the possibility of an administration entering next January that's friendlier to carbon-based energy like coal, oil, and natural gas. I'll be back with more news right after this.
Do you know it's illegal to dig or excavate without knowing what's below? This is Jan Warren, Executive Director for One Call of Wyoming. We will be hosting workshops around the state to educate homeowners, realtors, landscapers, underground facility owners, and excavators on the state law, industry best practices when it comes to planting a tree, building a fence, or any other excavation project you have planned. Join us for a free breakfast, get your questions answered, and learn how One Call of Wyoming is here to help. Go to onecallofwyoming.com and register today.
Well, if a pet Gila monster is on your wish list, you should probably reconsider, particularly in light of a Lakewood, Colorado man's death after he was bitten by one of his. Cowboy State Daily's Mark Hines spoke to a couple of Wyoming pet dealers who said that keeping those critters in captivity isn't a good idea.
And they said, yeah, probably not the best species to try to keep as a pet. You've got the venom and then the temperament. They're just not a good option for a pet, so people would recommend against keeping them as such.
Gila monsters are a species of lizard native to the southwestern U.S. and the northwestern Mexican state of Sonora. They can grow up to about 22 inches in length and are the only venomous lizard species native to the U.S. And in most museums, the exhibits sit stoically. It's look, but don't touch. But at the National Museum of Military Vehicles in Du Bois, vintage U.S. tanks proudly parade and spin in the snow for spectators, according to Cowboy State Daily's Andrew Rossi.
When Dan Starks founded the National Museum of Military Vehicles in Du Bois, it started just as a well-intentioned collection of military vehicles. Now they've adopted a new mission, if you will, which they're calling their authentic ground-up restoration, which means that it's not just getting these vehicles and restoring them to make them look pretty for museum displays. It's about being as authentic as possible.
The technicians at the Du Bois Museum want to get every vehicle in working condition, whether it'll be in a parade, sitting outside on a pedestal, or inside as a museum exhibit. And that's today's news. Get your free digital subscription to Wyoming's only statewide newspaper by hitting the subscribe button on CowboyStateDaily.com. I'm Wendy Kaur for Cowboy State Daily.